online and on your smart speaker.
Totally topical transfer talk.
Fabulous stuff.
The Transfer Insiders with Adi Oladipo and Rory Jennings on talkSPORT.
Good evening, Transfer Insiders. Adi Oladipo, Rory Jennings with you until 10 o'clock. The poll going on right now on our Twitter page. Who is the greatest ever Brazilian footballer? Is it Ronaldinho, who 21 years ago today signed for Barcelona? Is it the great R9, I think the greatest footballer ever? Or is it Pelé, who everyone considers the best footballer of all time? Start your votes. Do we have an update on the poll? Is it on? Have you got it there, Mr. Jennings? An update on the poll as to who's leading? I'd be astounded, by the way, if it's not R9. I'd be absolutely astounded.
It's not R9.
What?
It's not. It's actually a landslide currently. The greatest Brazilian player. The landslide is 43% in favour of Pelé.
Go on. The rest?
43% in favour of Pelé. 29% in favour of Ronaldo. 24% Ronaldinho, and 4% other. Long way to go, though.
Like, what could the other really be? Like, who else could they really think?
You could say Neymar, maybe. You could say Thiago Silva. Juninho.
What do you just go back? Who?
Thiago Silva.
Someone might say Thiago Silva is the greatest Brazilian footballer of all time.
I think you could say that. I mean, he's definitely top 10 Brazilians ever, isn't he? So then it becomes a debate, how highly do you rank
Obviously he's not, is he? He's not even top
Who,
10.
Thiago Silva?
Yeah, Thiago Silva.
What kind of bias do you have against defenders?
I think they'll probably have everyone in the 1970s Brazilian team over Thiago Silva.
No, Thiago Silva is definitely top 10 Brazilian.
This is outrageous. This is outrageous.
You're outrageous. This isn't even...
Get him off the air.
This isn't even something controversial. This isn't even me being controversial. Like, that's true. Thiago Silva, look at his career. It's glittering.
Yeah, this is the yellow card. This is 100%.
What are you on about?
Let's welcome in Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat podcast. Chris, did you hear that? Did you hear what Rory just said there? That some people might say Thiago Silva is one of the greatest Brazilian footballers of all time. Did you hear that, Chris?
Yeah, well, I've got to admit, I don't really agree with a lot of what Rory says, so there you are.
Chris, we were just talking with Richarlison. I don't know if you heard the chat. Obviously, heavily linked with a move away from the club to Saudi Arabia, a fee of around 60 million. I mean, is it... Look, he had a better season last season. Obviously, his first season was a disaster, but he had a better season last season. Would you want to see a third season of Richarlison? Happy to let him go? Where are you with it?
I'd be totally happy to let him go, to be honest, Addy. I think that he needs to deliver a lot more. He needs to score a lot more goals. I think he is very, very wasteful in front of goal. I was even at a charity game last year and he was playing against a bunch of YouTubers, and every single opportunity he had, he missed and blasted over the bar. He's a good player. He's a decent player. But I think that if Spurs want to go onto that next level in the second season under Postecoglou, we need to sign a much better striker. Unfortunately, he's out injured again, and it looks like he's going to miss the summer tour in Japan and South Korea. So that's a bit of a blow for Spurs as well, because it means that Heung-min Son will probably have to play through the middle again. And I think that he is a lot more effective coming in off the left. But I think that the first 12 months under Postecoglou has been a decent opening 12 months at his time at Spurs. But it is now about going to that next level, about getting into the Champions League again. And, perhaps one day even challenging for the Premier League title. Because, of course, Ange has come out and said a number of times that he's not interested in fourth, he's not interested in third or second. He wants to be number one. And he is used to winning trophies. So let's make that charge.
I'm saying nothing. I'm saying, Chris, can we talk about the result that Tottenham got in the friendly? They beat Hearts 5-1. Archie Gray's played well, didn't he? Made his debut.
Unbelievable. Fantastic start on his debut. He played at centre-back, of course, completely out of position, but this is exactly why Spurs signed him. A really, really good young talent. He played the opening 45 minutes at centre-back and did extremely well. We know that he plays in centre midfield. We know that he can be very versatile and play at right back, but very, very composed on the ball, way beyond his years, and a really, really exciting prospect. I can certainly see why Spurs paid so much money for him. Spurs at the moment are going down the route of signing, really good young talents. But in my opinion, I think this is great for the future of the football club. But for now, I feel like we need to be signing some more experienced players as well and having that good mix in the squad. I can completely see what Ange Postecoglou is doing, but we do. And we always seem to be a couple of players away from going to that next level. But I'm really hoping that Ange Postecoglou is different to all the other managers, and he does get everything on his shopping list.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of players he bought in last season, both were fantastic until they were injured, and that's obviously Van de Ven, who I thought was outstanding. I mean, a lot of people will talk Saliba, and look, I think Saliba was probably the number one centre-back, but Van de Ven, I think, pushed him all the way. And Maddison was great as well until he got injured. You must be hopeful, bearing in mind the business that he has done, that if given the right amount of money, Ange can get it right in the transfer window again.
Absolutely. And it's fair to say, Addy, that in the 2 transfer windows that he has had so far, last summer was probably one of the best transfer windows in Premier League history for Spurs. Of course, in January, we signed Timo Werner on loan, and we got Dragushin in, which is a fantastic signing. Did extremely well in the Euros, and it was nice to see, him actually have some game time, because us Spurs fans haven't seen that much of him. So it'd be interesting to see whether he gets more game time next season. But it is fair to say that it has changed at Tottenham over the last 12 months in terms of us doing business early, in terms of the types of players that we're getting in. But we were told, 5 years ago or so, that the stadium was going to be a game changer. Spurs will go out and spend more money, spend more wisely. A lot of players have gone out the door as well. And it is fair to say, when Ange Postecoglou walked through that door, there was a lot to do. There is still a lot to do, but he has worked heavily on departures as well, with the likes of Dyer, Ndombele, Perisic, Rodon, Tanganga, Sessegnon gone out the door. But we still have players like Bryan Hill, Reguilon. Højbjerg is expected to go out the door. Lo Celso is expected to go out the door. It'd be interesting to see whether Ben Davies stays at the football club. It'd be interesting, like you've said, about Richarlison. So there is still a lot to do, but we need depth. In this window, we need depth. And in my opinion, we need a right back, a left back, a centre back, a midfielder, and definitely attacking options up front as a number 9.
Chris, it seems like Ange Postecoglou's name will be on the long list of candidates that the FA will be considering to replace Gareth Southgate. Any genuine fear from you that Postecoglou could have his head turned by the England job?
Well, he said on Wednesday, Rory, that he's a Tottenham manager, and he is here to do the business, and it'll be unfinished business until he makes the club successful. I'm confident that Ange Postecoglou, if given time, money, tools, everything that he wants to happen at the club, I'm hoping that he will be successful, and I wouldn't be at all surprised that he will be the next man to lift Spurs a trophy, because that is exactly what we need right now.
5th last season. Obviously, look, there was a time when you felt like you were a banker, I thought, for top 4, but it did end in 5th. Aston Villa obviously squeaked into that last place. What is the expectations next season? Like realistic expectations as well, because Chelsea are going to go big. United look like they're going to do business as well. Where do you finish next season?
Well, that's an interesting one, Addy, because this transfer window is going to tell us exactly what or where Spurs should and will finish at the end of the season, because every one of us, every Spurs fan at the moment, is expecting this transfer window to go big, so Spurs are competing. We have to close that gap to the top 4. We have to close the gap to the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal. Are Spurs going to do that? That is the million-dollar question. We've had good transfer windows so far. The recruitment has been good in the last 12 months, but this does need to continue. The expectation is that Spurs should be playing Champions League football year in, year out, but we need statement signings. In my opinion, we need to go out and sign someone like Eze, pay the £60 million release clause, go and get someone like Ivan Toney, £50 million. Go out and have a statement window to show the fans and show Ange Postecoglou that he is being backed fully, that we are going to challenge for something next year, because we've always been a couple of players away, and we don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned those 2 players, and the latter being the one I want to talk about now. I saw a piece today that Brentford are going to slash the price on Ivan Toney just because there haven't been any offers. I think they've put a price tag on him of around 80 to 100 million. No one's going to, I don't think, in this market anymore, going to pay that. But at 50 million, I mean, surely everyone should be knocking that door down. And you have, as you say, if Richarlison does go, you've got a massive hole up there with an England striker, Ivan Toney. He's from the London area as well. He'll be settled immediately. That just seems to me like a no-brainer, Ivan Toney to Spurs.
I completely agree. And, when you're bringing in players with vast Premier League experience, that Ivan Toney can go into your team. That he can score goals. That he can provide assists as well. You know that he is good at set pieces. You know that he can score a penalty. He would fit in extremely well at Spurs. The only doubt that I have about him moving to Tottenham is that it might not be the profile that Ange Postecoglou and the club want, i.e. with all of the betting scandal, etc. But as far as a player on the pitch, I think that he would fit in perfectly well. And someone like Eze as well. Perfect, you know, go out and hit that release clause, buy the player, and show us some statement signings, because I've got to admit, you know, a world-class player, I think the last world-class player that Spurs actually signed was back in 1994 when we brought Klinsmann in. Even if I asked you to, when was the last time you went, wow, Spurs have signed him?
God, that is true. It's a great question, Chris.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's Klinsmann, 1994, the last time.
There must have been a wow they've signed him.
I don't think there has been, has there? I mean, when you think about their wow players, you're thinking of like Gareth Bale, but he wasn't a wow player when he arrived.
Yeah, you're right. Nor was Berbatov.
No, nor was Kane. They've had lots of iconic players, but they didn't buy them as iconic players. They turned them into almost, which is impressive in itself, but not the question.
Yeah, interesting.
What about with regard to Archie Gray, Chris? Just wanted to take you back to this. Is he likely to be featuring and starting games for Tottenham? He's very young, isn't he?
That's a very good question, and that's why I said about the experienced players coming in as well, because you cannot keep relying on these young players. They're only 18. You know, we've signed Timo Werner again on loan for next season, and we've also signed Bergvall and Gray, two 18-year-olds, two wonder kids. But are you going to be putting all of the pressure on them? I certainly hope that he is going to be around. I certainly hope that he is not going to go out on loan. You know, you spend £40 million on a player. He is used to playing games, and he... I tell you what, you know, seeing him at Hearts the other night, a really, really decent player, extremely comfortable on the ball, and I think that he is going to fit in extremely well and get a really in time under Postecoglou.
I think most Spurs fans agree that Postecoglou's first season was a good one. I've spoken to so many and they kind of graded it like a B or an A-. I think that the reason a lot of people didn't get it any higher than that, because there only seemed to be one way of playing football. And we saw that in that game against Chelsea, where he only stuck to his principles. Do you think he needs to kind of maybe be a bit more flexible this time around this season?
Absolutely, and we all expected a couple of changes in the backroom staff. That's happened as well, so that's going to be interesting going forward. But going back to last season in the summer, there wasn't really a lot of expectation because, of course, we played no European football. The only disappointment for me last season was going out of the League Cup in August. You know, him having made 10 changes, but of course he had to see, you know, how certain players were playing, who he wanted to keep, who he wanted to get rid of. He identified that problem very quickly. But in terms of league position, we're back in the Europa League for next season. But the target this year has to be Champions League and, you know, perhaps put a trophy in the cabinet, because as I keep saying on this show, 16 long years. But Rory, let me tell you that Spurs did actually lift a trophy last year. We won the Premier League 2 title. And the other thing I would say is because of that, there were so many decent under-21 performances individually and as a collective as well. You know, you got Mikey Moore, 16 years old. He also scored against Hearts on Wednesday evening. Superb performance and took his goal really well. Will Lancashire, 19. Jamie Donnelly, 19 as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether these guys get opportunities, because they certainly do deserve them.
Chris, final one, very quickly. It's more towards one of your former players, Harry Kane. You would have obviously been watching the Euros, and you would have seen that wasn't a fit Harry Kane, right? I'm not giving him excuses, but it wasn't. But maybe it was a selfish Harry Kane to still want to play. And you've experienced that with obviously Harry Kane playing instead of Lucas Moura, Champions League final against Liverpool a few seasons back. What did you make of Harry Kane, sort of all this drama about him sort of picking himself, if you like?
Well, I can tell you, Addy, it took me a couple of days to get home from the final. And sadly, in the last 10 years, I've been to 5 finals, 3 with Tottenham, 2 with England, and we've lost a lot. And it is hard to take. And Harry Kane has played in all of those games. Not that I'm blaming him, but it must be extremely hard to be playing in them. It's extremely hard for me to be watching them. It took me a couple of days to get home because British Airways cancelled my flight, by the way. So that was a terrible experience. But Harry Kane, of course, how can you leave Harry Kane out of the team? You know, he's one of the world's best players. He scores goals. The Euros wasn't best for him, and the final, again, wasn't best for him. I saw a lot of criticism for Harry Kane after, of course, England lost to Spain. It's frustrating. It's going to be interesting now, though, who takes over as England boss and see what happens next.
Cheers, Chris. Top man, as always. Thanks for coming on. Chris Cowlin there, the Spurs Chat podcast, part of the talkSPORT fan network. All right, let's get an update as to what's going on in the darts. Abigail Davis watching for talkSPORT.
Yeah, things getting very interesting in our opening match of the evening here at the Winter Gardens. Michael van Gerwen has